back. This is The Beat with Ari Melber on MSNBC. I'm joined by Ron Klain, who managed the Ebola response for the Obama administration, and Heather McGhee. We have Dr. Schaffner with us. We'll be joined momentarily by a senator, and I'll tell viewers who've been watching, we were having some tech difficulties a few moments ago, but we think we're through them. And Heather, I want to play something that we put together for your analysis here. Dr. Fauci testifying today before the Senate, and we were seeing him really contradict things that the president has claimed. Take a look overall.
It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear.
That is just not going to happen because it's such a highly transmissible virus.
Through an incredible amount of work by the federal government, we have a big, beautiful overcapacity.
We're going in the right direction, but the right direction does not mean we have by any means total control of this outbreak.
They have a very low mortality rate like we do. We have a low mortality rate also.
The number of deaths are likely higher than that number.
The people aren't going to stand for it. They want to get back. They're not going to stand for it. They want our country open. I want our country open.
There is a real risk that you will trigger an outbreak that you may not be able to control.
That's all new testimony. The doctor speaking from home, like so many people, as mentioned, he's self-isolating. But that's all brand new today. In formal testimony, what does it say to you, Heather?
Well, thankfully, the American people are putting a bet on Dr. Fauci. And if it's Trump versus Fauci, or even Alexander or Paul, or most any of the other Republicans in Congress versus Fauci, they're listening to Fauci. The Washington Post released a poll today that showed that, generally speaking, governors are getting high bipartisan votes from Americans and support from Americans. But the governors, mainly the Republican governors who have moved to open up their economies and put workers and the public at risk, they're underwater in Georgia and Texas and Florida. And so the American people, for all of the protests that we see and all that Donald Trump wants to tweet about, are scared. They're cautious. They're trying to look for expertise. And I think it's really important. Today's testimony was extremely important for the American people who are just wanting straight, sobering answers.
Yeah, it's really important. That's why I've been highlighting that. Before we bring in the Senator, Ron, I have one more piece of business with you. It involves a compliment to your public service. So there you go. Sometimes that's going to happen. But it also goes to the larger dynamics of this with the president and Donald Trump, who's obsessed with comparing himself, often inaccurately, to everyone, but particularly Barack Obama. At a time period where, on the one hand, a lot of people say, look, let's put all the comparisons to the side and focus exclusively on doing the work and reporting the facts. But then, with this president, that leaves a lot of his comparisons unanswered. This is a long-time Republican operative, worked for John McCain, among others, known to our audience, Steve Schmidt. And we did want to play for you, Ron, what he said about the Obama administration and your tenure. Take a look.
If Barack Obama was the president of the United States, this would not have happened. We would have had competent professional people. We would have had someone like Ron Klain in charge of it, not the confederacy of dunces that we see running around the West Wing.
Ron, disaster and disease response involves, by definition, some unavoidable loss of life and tragedies when it gets to this level. We've seen that in many countries, in fairness to any leader. But we're also hearing from experts, and I just showed you Steve's opinion, that there have been policy failures and leadership failures here that could have saved lives. You were name-checked. Your response.
Well, I appreciate the compliment. It's very kind. I don't really deserve the credit. The credit really goes to President Obama himself, and I'm sure that must be frustrating to President Trump. But, here are the big differences, Ari, which is President Obama put science first. He listened to Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci was an advisor to President Obama and 5 other presidents, and President Obama took his advice. He wasn't busy debating Dr. Fauci in public. He was busy listening to him in private. He used every tool of the government at his disposal to fight Ebola overseas and here at home. President Trump still refuses to use the Defense Production Act to fix the testing problem, using it to send meatpacking workers back to work, but not to make the workplace safe for the rest of us at all, and for meatpacking workers too. And then President Obama listened to other government experts and really used the power of the government. Instead, we've heard that basically Jared Kushner brought in a bunch of young consultants and turned them loose to try to solve these problems and really didn't listen to the great teams that are in the government. Look, I'm grateful I've gotten the credit from Steve and others. The key to the Ebola response was leadership by President Obama and the many, many experts inside our government on logistics, on testing, on organizing. There are brilliant men and women who give their careers to work for our government. This president derides them as the deep state. They are the people who can solve problems like this.
How was it trying to do this remotely at your job today?
Well, it was absolutely remarkable to have all four witnesses join us remotely, and all of the members teleworking from their offices or Capitol Hill apartments or their home. Both the chair and ranking member were remote in their home states, and we were called back to Washington, D.C. to do oversight and to work on issues. And I just have to throw in my criticism of the fact that we have done nothing related to the pandemic on the Senate floor since we were called back into session.
What did you think that you learned? We highlighted a few aspects of today's hearing, but what did you learn and what is important for your constituents and Americans to know from Dr. Fauci and the other testimony you received today?
Well, it was dramatic in terms of how significantly behind we are in lacking a national testing strategy, and for that matter, a national strategy around providing PPE and other medical equipment. We've seen this all play out, and we keep getting promised that it's at hand. My first question of Dr. Redfield was whether he believed that the testing strategy and protocol at the White House was a standard that should be viewed as a best practice for the rest of this country. He stammered and gave basically a non-reply, but it's really, really clear that what has been put in place to protect the White House is not available for people in essential workplaces across this country right now. When I hear from people who work in meatpacking plants in the state of Wisconsin who can't get the PPE they need and certainly waited far too long to get testing, there's just two standards, the one for the White House, the one for the president, and the one for the rest of the workers in the United States.